Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. In the late 1980s, Lucille Einstein contributed a series of letters, 1,400 letters that were written by her father. She contributed those to the Hebrew University with orders not to publish their contents until 2 decades after his death. One of the letters that he sent, I'd like to read to you. When I proposed the theory of relativity, very few understood me, and what I will reveal now to transmit to mankind will also collide with the misunderstanding and prejudice in the world. I ask you to guard the letters as long as necessary, years, decades, until society is advanced enough to accept what I will explain below. There is an extremely powerful force that, so far, science has not found a formal explanation to. It is a force that includes and governs all others, and is even behind any phenomenon operating in the universe, and has not yet been identified by us. This universal force is love. When scientists look for a unified theory of the universe, they forgot the most powerful unseen force. Love is light that enlightens those who give and receive it. Love is gravity because it makes some people feel attracted to others. Love is power because it multiplies the best we have and allows humanity not to be extinguished in their blind selfishness. Love unfolds and reveals. For love we live and die. Love is God, and God is love. This force explains everything and gives meaning to life. This is the variable that we have ignored for too long, maybe because we are afraid of love, because it is the only energy in the universe that a man has not learned to drive at will. To give visibility to love, I made a simple substitution in my most famous equation. If instead of E equals mc squared, we accept that the energy to heal the world can be obtained through love, multiplied by the speed of light squared, we arrive at the conclusion that love is the most powerful force there is, because it has no limits. After the failure of humanity in the use and control of the other forces of the universe that have turned against us, it is urgent that we nourish ourselves with another kind of energy. If we want our species to survive, if we are to find meaning in life, if we want to save the world and every sentient being that inhabits it, love is the only and one and only answer. Perhaps we are not yet ready to make a bomb of love, a device powerful enough to entirely destroy the hate, selfishness, and greed that devastate the planet. However, each individual carries within them a small but powerful generator of love whose energy is waiting to be released. When we learn to give and receive this universal energy, dear Lucille, we will have affirmed that love conquers all, is able to transcend everything and anything, because love is the quintessence of life. I deeply regret not having been able to express what is in my heart, which is quietly beaten for you all my life. Maybe it's too late to apologize, but as time is relative, I need to tell you that I love you and thank you, and I have reached the ultimate answer, your father, Albert Einstein. Now, I read that for you today because we're on the road to human kindness, and part of human kindness is love, and that's the most powerful force there is out there. So the question is, can we afford to love? Can we afford to be kind to others? One of the things that Congress did in 1969 was they gave us a way to express that, and it's been overlooked for a very long time. And that way of expression was in sections of the tax code where they said, if you do something for mankind when you die, you'll be able to have better tax arrangements while you're alive. That's our bargain with you. We're saying to you that if you're good to humans and human kindness is in your heart at the end of your life, then we will give you lower taxes and you'll have to pay less while you're alive. It's a very simple proposition, but most people don't know that it exists. So I wanted to show you something today. I wanted to show you a couple of examples of how people have actually used this to show their human kindness. And it has to do with economics. we have to put politics aside and we have to look at economics. And part of economics in this situation is the economics of love and human kindness. How does that work to your benefit? So let me give you an example. There was a couple, they were very fortunate. They had stock worth $800,000 and they had paid initially when they invested money with it, they had invested $100,000. So they had gained $700,000, but it was tied up in stock. And they were concerned about the stock market, and they were also concerned about how they would get income. They needed to get income from the 800,000. Sorry about that. I told Siri to shut up, but she doesn't want to listen to me. So how do you get the income from the 800,000? So one of the problems that they have is when they have a $700,000 gain, the government's going to take 20 to 25%, depending on where you live and what your brackets are, but somewhere in that number. Let's say it's 20. Let's say it's 20%. So they're going to take $140,000 in tax. Now, what I said to you before, the bargain that I was making with you, it's a spam wrist too. You take my watch and burn it. Take it off my wrist. Thank you.
Oh, it's magnetic.
Yeah.
Oh, fancy schmancy.
Yeah.
watches.
Hey, it's theory of relativity.
This is not sponsored by.
Sorry, folks. You have to kill the watch.
Hey, no problem.
Okay, thank you. So they're going to have $140,000 in tax. Now, remember what I said to you about this proposition. The government said that if you do something, if you leave something to the community when you pass, we'll give you lower taxes while you're alive. Well, so what they said was you can eliminate this tax in a transaction. So how do they do that? They do that in a very simple way. They contribute this $800,000 to what is called a charitable pooled income fund, charitable pooled income fund. When they contribute to this charitable pooled income fund, the $800,000 in stock is sold. And how much tax does this pooled income fund pay when it happens? And that is zero. So the tax on the transaction of the sale of the stock is eliminated. So now what happens to this $800,000 that's in this pooled income fund? Well, it is invested by their investment, whoever their investment person is, to produce income to the donors. Now, one thing you can see right away is that income from $800,000 to the donors, assuming that it was invested in exactly the same way, versus $660,000, because it was $140,000 in tax, right? They would only have $660,000 to invest if they had paid the tax. So they're getting the investment income from $800,000 versus $660,000. So that's the first thing. And because this trust has an agreement to pay them all of the interest, all of the dividends, and all of the net short-term realized gains, and half of the net realized long-term capital gains, they're getting all the income that they would get ordinarily, with the exception of 50% of the long-term capital gains, which are kept inside the fund. The other thing that happens, which is also very interesting, they get a tax deduction. So not only do they eliminate the tax on the transaction, but they get a tax deduction. And because they were both age 65, that tax deduction was approximately $540,000. In their tax bracket, that $540,000 represented a savings of about $200,000 in tax. That's actual cash in their pocket. So what I said before is the government said, if you leave something to charity when you die, we'll give you lower taxes while you're alive. This $800,000 that's producing income to the donors, the only difference is that instead of this being left to the heirs, the remainder in here is going to go to charity. So at the end of the day, what the individual has done is they've taken an asset, the $800,000 in stock, they've converted it into an income stream, and they have reduced their taxes both on the transaction itself, because it would have been a capital gain transaction, and they've also increased their current wealth by $200,000 in tax savings. So they get the income from $800,000 rather than the reduced amount. And what's really interesting about this is that at the end of the day, when this is going to be left to charity, what is that charity going to look like? In this case, they have chosen to use a donor-advised fund. And that donor-advised fund can exist for generations. And what that allows the individuals to do is they are telling their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren ad infinitum, okay, that they will be able to release funds from this $800,000 to whatever causes of love that they may have. So when I said before that this is an instrument of love, it is, because in the beginning, it has a lot of pluses for the donor, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of pluses for the community. And that's the transaction that Congress wanted to happen. They wanted to build the charitable wealth in the country by increasing the amount of money that is left to charity. Now, ordinarily, the government would have got a pretty big bite of this. So you would say, well, why did they do that? Look at the taxes that they lost. Look at the tax deduction that he got. Look at the tax savings that he had. Pardon?
No, we're just looking at a white.
I know.
Okay.
It's very hard to see what we're talking about. So they actually get a win-win. And it's a win for the donor because the donor saves taxes, has more income production. It's a win for the heirs because they become philanthropic going forward. And it's a win for the government. Why is it a win for the government? Because the government gets relief from having to support what this is intended to support. That's what the whole point of this was. They wanted to build the charitable sector because they knew that over time, with demographics the way they are, they're not going to be able to continue to support the things that are necessary to support. And we see that going on right now. That's why the national debt is the way that it is. They're supporting a lot of non-governmental organizations that don't need to have and shouldn't be having government support. They should be supported by the community. So this all takes time. So the other winner here is, besides the heirs and the government, is the nonprofit or the NGO sector. And the NGO sector is the sector that provides services into the community that helps a community function properly at a social level. And instead of the money this time coming from the government, it's as a result of money not going to the government, but being redirected to the NGOs. So this is real love. Because at the end of the day, the donor that did this said to me, you know what? It's not the tax savings and it's not the amount of income. It's the feeling that I'm getting by knowing that my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren will have the opportunity to be philanthropic to the community and to show that they care about the community. Now, obviously, this is not done in a vacuum, the person that's made this contribution. This is not the only capital that they had, and there are other things that went into the planning. And that's one of the reasons why it's important to work with a planner that understands how this process works, because there are a lot of parts to it and a lot of things that can be done to improve. So that's an example of a pooled income fund. And that's one of the sections, that's one of the social security devices. So why is it social security? Why does it sound like Social Security? Well, both devices, Social Security. Sorry about that. There we go. So both the Social Security and Social Security, we'll make this one that way. Both are government sanctioned, right? Government gave us both. They gave us this in the form of 1934 law that said you have to contribute to the Social Security system. And they gave this to us in the 1969 law, which said you can contribute to a fund that will go to charity, and in so doing, you're going to solve some of our problems, but you're also going to get income. Because when you do this, the ultimate objective is to get income. That's what the government is promising, income. The same thing is true here. Income is promised. The difference is that at the end of the day, after you've put everything into Social Security, and think about this, if you reach retirement age, and you pass away the next day and you don't have any family, what happens to all the money that you contributed under the Social Security system that's contributed by your employer and by you? Your employer and you contributed, and you've contributed quite a bit of money, because it generally works out to about 7+% from the employer and 7+% from you. So that 14% that you're contributing of income each year, and a lot of people don't even look at their pay stubs to see what that number is, but it's pretty significant. All of that you contribute here, at the end of the day, when you pass away, what you get is $255 from the government for the cost of burial.
I have a question.
Yes.
Has it been $255 since 1969?
Yes, from 1934.
Wow.
I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, that never has changed. So Social Security is a little different. Again, it's a government program to produce income, but at the end of the day, the person that had put this money in, the same worker that put the money in, instead of it going into Never Land, wherever it goes when it goes to the government after it's all gone, that is a charitable fund or a piece of an endowment that's going to be left to a non-governmental organization, a 501c3, a charity. So they're both very similar, except the end result is different. And so you have control over what you created. And you also have a way of using that while you're accumulating it, this tax-free environment, which you create because the government says you can create it. This is a 664 trust. It could be a pooled income fund. It could also be a charitable gift annuity. Those are all the same kind of tax-free envelopes that you can utilize. They serve different purposes, and they're used at different times, and they're used in different ways. And that's one of the reasons why you need to have a professional advisor, somebody that's a professional philanthropic advisor. And that professional philanthropic advisor is the one that can help you make the proper choice on how you want to create that envelope. And by the way, you're not limited to creating just one envelope. You can create as many envelopes as you need. You can create as many of these tax-free devices. When I say tax-free, they're favorably taxed. They'll come down on me because I'm saying the words tax-free. They are tax-free in the terms that you can sell appreciated assets and not pay any capital gains tax. They're tax-free because as the money accumulates, there's no tax being paid. So from that standpoint, they're tax-free. But the words tax-free has a different kind of connotation, and I don't want to mislead you. They're not completely tax-free because the income that you get from it is taxable. So the point is that the government said, we're going to give you this opportunity to utilize a favorably taxed device to accumulate money, to produce income. And there are other devices like this. I always relate to a chart that you need to kind of have a handle on, and it has to do with when are taxes paid. Sorry about that, I keep putting the cover on, but anyway, taxes. If you do nothing else in your financial literacy quest to become financially literate, you need to understand how taxes work and what is available to utilize in order to pay less tax, because you're not duty bound to pay the most that the law extracts. You have the right and privilege to pay the least amount that the law allows, but you need to know how to do that. And not casting any aspersions on accountants, but accountants are generally, they're reporting for you to the IRS. They're your means to report. They're not generally involved in charitable planning from this kind of perspective, this type of philanthropic planning where taxes are involved, because in order to get the tax relief, it's a little complicated through the charitable vehicles. But taxes are unusual because people don't really understand how it works. But I can tell you this, that if let's say you have a very simple program where you have a savings account. Well, we know this, that in order to get the money to put into the savings account, if you're working, you had to pay tax. That's to get the money in the first place. That tax is paid on the earnings. Now, while you put it into the bank, when it's in the bank, you also pay tax on earnings. At the end of the day, if you take out more than you put in, you will pay a tax. So that's the way most people save. Highly taxed. There are other ways to save that are not that heavily taxed. One of the ways you can do it is if you put your money in after tax has been paid, but allow it to grow free of tax. And at the end of the day, take it out where it's taxable. So the advantage is having it tax-free while it grows. That can be done with an annuity or a life insurance contract. There's another level, which would be pre-tax, going in, grow free of tax while it's in, and then it's taxable when it comes out. This is a 401k, this is an IRA, this is a pension plan. These are qualified plans. But it's also a way to use the charitable vehicles. So for those of you out there who have satisfied all of your pre-tax investments in a 401k or pension plan and so on, if you still want to put more money in pre-tax, you can use a charitable vehicle, which will give you pre-tax relief, will grow free of tax. And there are some instances where it could come out tax-free. And obviously, that's the best of all worlds, where you can utilize and have no tax. So this very basic chart shows the importance of tax planning, because if you do tax planning properly, you increase the amount of money that you're able to grow and the amount of money that can produce income and the amount of money that will endow you. Because endowment is endowing not just what people think about philanthropy and charities, it's also endowing yourself. This is Route 664, the road to human kindness.
Charity.
Pardon?
Speaking of charity.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have the Adventures of Charity coming up. This is an episode. This is episode 8.
The last episode, I think it's 5.
Episode 5. Okay, sit back and enjoy the Adventures of Charity.
Introducing the Adventures of Charity.
On a beautiful sunny day in our nation's capital, we zoom in on the White House, over the lawns, and into the Oval Office itself. There we see Charity and her 3 trustees discussing the game plan for raising awareness on social charity throughout America.
The damage was more extensive than we realized, Madam President. The collector had a tight grip on the entire country. Who knows where he's going to hide? But we'll be ready for him whenever he rears his ugly head again. For now, the important thing is that we saved Washington, D.C. Now it's time to save the rest of America from a financial disaster of epic proportions.
How in the world are we going to fix the economy? Every president before me has tried and failed. We're nearly 30 trillion in debt. Not million, not billion, trillion. How did we get to such a cockamamie number anyways?
I believe we can answer that question. You see, we have been watching Earth for a long time, particularly the United States. And we noticed how your spending habits grew worse and worse as your federal government grew larger and more powerful over time. Social programs like Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, welfare, and over $1 trillion going to charity every year contribute to the rising tide of debt that now threatens to unleash a deluge of financial instability all over America.
And it won't just be America's streets that suffer the consequences, I'm afraid. Because when America sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. Therefore, what we do here today matters a great deal in how the rest of the world will handle their own debts.
The people have the power in their hands to change the status quo and establish a new precedent of charity that has the potential to spread to other nations and unite humanity once and for all in an era of human kindness, all through the power of philanthropy.
My friends are right, Madam President. We have to raise awareness about social charity throughout America. Let's spread the word.
Sounds like a wonderful idea, folks, but remind me one more time how it works for those of us who are a little later to the game than others. This was part of the Internal Revenue Code in the first place, right? You're telling me we've had the answer to our financial woes staring us in the face since 1969?
That's correct, ma'am. Congress passed it into law at that time, but very few Americans even know about it. Crazy thing is that it was designed to be a tool for the middle class, average, hardworking American, not a loophole for the rich alone. It's time to let the rest of America in on the little, not so secret to endow America with financial stability. Social charity gives you one of 3 avenues, which my friends can better explain. Take it away, guys.
I am Cratius, and I represent the Charitable Remainder Trust. Through a CRT, a contributor can choose to endow the charitable cause of their choice, creating a financial trust with that foundation that will generate a steady stream of income in return for the generous contribution. That income has the potential to grow every year, and at the end of the donor's life, the remaining money accumulated over the years goes to endowing that cause instead of being sucked up by the government. Such a person will now only pay necessary taxable funds, endow the cause most important to them, and secure their own income.
I'm Pithecus, and I represent the Pooled Income Fund. Through a PIF, a contributor can endow their local high schools, colleges, museums, or any other local community organizations with contributions in both cash and non-cash assets that will accumulate in a fund that will grow over time to endow those projects at the end of the contributor's life. In return, the contributor not only receives income from that organization, but also gets a tax deduction. It's a win-win situation for both parties.
And I'm Chigaro, and I represent the Charitable Gift Annuity. through which a philanthropist can choose to donate property instead of selling it, thereby avoiding a capital gains tax. They not only gain income they can rely on for the rest of their lives, but receive considerable tax deductions as well, and end up endowing their favorite charity through the value of that property.
Now that you have an idea of what each tool does, you can understand how we can not only financially endow every American, but also pull the country out of debt. Because if every American chooses Social Security instead of Social Security, with the current U.S. population at 328 million people, we can pay off over $28 trillion by the year 2050. The first step is to find and recruit more certified professional philanthropic advisors who are well versed in Route 664. We need to provide America with access to these quality advisors so they can guide them to the charitable plan that is best for them. Rome wasn't built in a day, but we can't stop it from crashing. Social Security endows America with a stable foundation of wealth.
Jimmy, get me the press secretary on the line. We have to get the word out on Route 664. It's the road to human kindness.
Way to end. So that's Ventures of Charity. This is Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. I'm Les Winston, the national spokesperson for the Endow America Network Foundation and for socialcharity.org. Check us out on radio, on our digital radio station, so at route664radio.org. Got it right. Okay, thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.